They called it a voyage of peace until the stars bled red. Humanity's first step into the unknown was met not with welcome, but with horror. What began as a dream of unity turned into a scream echoing across galaxies. But from the ashes of betrayal rose a fire no empire could contain. What happens when the prey becomes the predator? If you're new, make sure to subscribe to the channel and show your support with a thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's jump into the story. Sure, here's part 1, First Light, First Blood, written in straightforward English and third-person narration, with a strong narrative to capture the viewer's attention. Renzo Calder had always imagined first contact with alien life as a moment of awe, not horror. Since he was a boy staring at stars from his tiny bedroom window, he had dreamed of glowing beings, peaceful exchanges, and strange music floating across the galaxy. Now, decades later, standing in mission control with the rest of the science delegation, he watched in silent disbelief as those dreams burned away. The research ship Compass floated in orbit around an uncharted moon, its sleek hull glinting against the vast black. The ship's cameras broadcast live back to Earth, every detail captured in stunning clarity. And then the visitors arrived. They were beautiful, in a strange, delicate way, moth-like wings that shimmered in shifting colors, long limbs, and smooth, round heads. Their ship had appeared without warning, unfolding like a flower beside the Compass. At first, the scientists had stepped forward, excited and hopeful. Some even waved. No weapons, no armor, only curiosity. Then came the moment no one could have prepared for. The aliens surged forward, quick as lightning, their limbs moving too fast to track, their tongues long, barbed, and coiled-lashed, out and pierced the nearest crew members with sickening accuracy. Renzo's breath caught in his throat. On the screen, screams erupted. One woman tried to run, slipping in the blood of her colleague. Another man grabbed a pipe to defend himself, but a second alien struck him down with brutal force. There was no negotiation, no effort at communication. Just violence, swift and merciless. The aliens yanked bodies into their ship like trophies, dissecting them with frightening precision. Their movements were both clinical and terrifying, as if they were performing an experiment on lab rats. The crew's cries for help echoed through mission control speakers, but no one could look away. Cameras aboard the Compass had been designed to document peaceful encounters, not massacres. They caught every detail, the glint of metal tools, slicing into flesh, the desperate flailing of human arms, and the final gasps of scientists who had only days ago celebrated their launch. A feed did not cut. It kept going unblinking until the alien ship backed away and turned its weapons on the Compass. Renzo flinched as the light on the screen surged. The explosion lit up the void, and then there was only debris spinning. Pieces of wreckage and frozen bodies drifting slowly through space. Silence followed. No one in the room moved. Renzo's heart thundered in his chest as he turned to the others. They were pale, shaking. Many had known the victims personally. A few had trained with them at the academy. Renzo clenched his fists, his jaw tight. He didn't cry. Not yet. Not until after he acted. "We're sending this to the public," he said flatly. "Every second of it." A young intern named Leo stood near the console, his eyes red with tears. "Shouldn't we send it to the government first?" he asked, his voice trembling. Renzo shook his head. "They'll bury it. We have to make sure the world sees what happened, that the dead are not forgotten." He placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, his voice softer. "You'll get fired for this, but I'll get you another job. Twice the pay. I promise." Leo nodded slowly. Then, without another word, he moved to the console and began uploading the footage. Within hours, the video was everywhere. Networks added warnings for disturbing content. but people watched anyway. All over Earth. Screens lit up with horror. The screams of the compass crew played in living rooms, in subway tunnels, on tablets and phones. The world grieved together. The names of the lost trended online. Candles lit windowsills. Protests erupted. Some people wept. Others demanded war. President Marta Hawley called Renzo directly. Her voice, normally calm and composed, was sharp with fury. "Do you know what you've done?" she snapped. "You set off a global panic." "I told the truth," Renzo replied. "That ship was called Compass. It was supposed to point us toward a brighter future. Now we're drifting in the dark." Marta fell silent for a moment. Then she sighed. "People will demand answers. They'll demand justice," Renzo corrected as night fell over Earth. And the stars returned to the sky. Renzo sat alone in his office. The chair creaked under his weight as he leaned forward and stared at the screen. Somewhere, beyond those pinpricks of light, the attackers were waiting, watching, maybe even planning their next move. But Earth wasn't the same planet it had been yesterday. It had seen first contact, and first blood, and from that blood, something else had awakened, something that had been sleeping too long. Resolve, rage, the will to rise. Renzo didn't know what would come next. He only knew it had begun. Let me know when you're ready for Part 2, Sparks of Resolve. Here is Part 2, Sparks of Resolve, written in clear, engaging third-person prose to continue your story. News of the massacre aboard the Compass spread faster than any virus in human history. Within 24 hours, every major city on Earth had seen the footage. The names of the victims were read aloud on talk shows, posted on billboards, and whispered in classrooms. Parents explained to children, in soft and broken voices, that not all aliens were friendly. Fear hung in the air like fog, but in that fear, something else began to grow. Resolve. Commander Dana Voss had served in Earth's peacekeeping fleet. For years, she had always believed in diplomacy, believing that violence was a last resort. But the faces of the murdered scientists haunted her. She had read their files. One had written poems between lab reports. Another had sent home letters about finding alien mushrooms that glowed blue under starlight. They had gone to space to explore, to learn, and now they were gone, torn apart. Dana stood on the edge of the launch platform as construction bots assembled the first of the new warships. Her boots echoed on the metal floor as she approached the viewing rail. Below her, a massive hull gleamed in the early light. The Sparrow's honor was still just a skeleton of steel and alloy, but it represented something bigger than its frame. A beginning, a warning. Earth would not be caught unprepared again. "We named this ship not out of pride," she said quietly, speaking to the text beside her, but out of pain. Behind her, others were already hard at work. Engineers and programmers, once dreaming of peaceful colonies and advanced trade, now wrote code for targeting systems and shield calibration. Drones hummed overhead. Supplies were stacked in tight rows. Production had tripled in just 3 days. On Mars, Luna, and the orbital stations, blueprints for new weapon platforms were approved. They called it the Unity Fleet Initiative, and this time, the mission wasn't to explore. It was to ensure Earth would never again be seen as prey. Across the ocean, in a secure bunker beneath the Andes Mountains, Professor Lena Idris examined the alien biology footage recovered from the Compass. Her field was xenolinguistics, not combat, but her hands shook with anger. She had spent decades preparing to communicate with intelligent life. She had imagined great exchanges: philosophy, history, peace. Instead, she'd watched a creature dig into a man's chest while he screamed for help. Lena paused the frame and stared into the alien's round, unblinking eyes. They didn't look cruel. They didn't even look aware, more like a hawk watching a mouse. A natural act of curiosity. Cold, indifferent, she took a deep breath and turned to her notes. Understanding the enemy might one day prevent war, or end one. Though she no longer held hope for diplomacy, she could at least prepare Earth to speak. Back in a language the invaders understood, survival. She worked late into the night, translating symbols recovered from the alien vessel. Each line of code, each drawn glyph, was a possible clue to the mindset of the killers. Somewhere in the details, Lena believed, was a key. Maybe not to peace, but to winning in a remote village in northern Canada. A teenager named Wesley Young watched the video again on his cracked tablet. He shouldn't have seen it. His parents had tried to block it, but curiosity always found a way. The screams made him cry the first time. Now, all he felt was cold. He hadn't known any of the crew, but the horror felt personal, real, close. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he opened an old notebook and began to draw. Warships, fighters, ideas for cloaking fields. The pages filled fast. Wes wasn't a soldier or a scientist, but in his small room, the fire had caught. He'd become one of millions who decided that day to be more than just a bystander back on Earth's orbital ring. Commander Dana received a message. It was short and unsigned. A video. She clicked play. It was a shaky recording from a small colony station, one of the outermost fringe worlds. The speaker, an old miner named Joaquin, held a rusted tool in one hand and a rifle in the other. "We heard what happened to the compass," he said, voice rough but steady. "We might be just miners, but if those things show up out here, they'll get a welcome they won't forget. Don't worry. Earth isn't alone out here." Dana smiled for the first time in days. Across every corner of human space, people were choosing to stand. Engineers, students, doctors, and yes, even children. They were building, planning, and refusing to give in to fear. That spark was everywhere now, lighting the path forward. In the days that followed, the first prototypes of the Unity fleet were tested in low orbit. The Sparrow's Honor was the first to fire its engines. It didn't carry scientists or diplomats. It carried shields thicker than any ship before it, and weapons powerful enough to crack an asteroid. Dana stood at the helm, hands steady on. "The controls, we're not running," she said to her crew. "We're rising." Back on Earth, Renzo Calder stood in front of the memorial being built for the Compass crew. The names etched in stone were a reminder of the price already paid. But behind him, towering in steel and fire, Earth's answer was being built. One spark had ignited millions. And the stars were watching. Let me know when you're ready for Part 3. Whispers Before the Storm. Steel sang in the shipyards as welders fused armor plates thicker than anything built before, and the sparks of their labor rained like orange snow across scaffolds stacked 10 stories high. The largest yard orbited Mars, where raw ore arrived in convoys from the belt and vanished into furnaces that glowed white-hot day and night. Overseer robots trundled along rails, carrying barrels of coolant and welding gas, while human crews in pressurized suits moved with practiced speed through tangles of cables. Admiral Oren Balor, commander of the new Unity fleet, walked the main gantry every dawn, his boots clanging over metal grates still warm from cutting torches. Engineers saluted as he passed. Balor was not an imposing man, broad shoulders, yes, but his hair was silver and his back carried an old injury, but the resolve in his eyes left no doubt he intended to win a war that humanity had never wanted to fight. Below him, the dreadnought Vigil took shape, her keel stretching the length of 3 city blocks. Each slab of armor bore the etched names of the Compass crew, letters cut so deep that flames would have to consume the entire hull before the memory could be erased. When the Vigil launched for sea trials, though there was no sea, only silent space view screens on Earth, filled with images of her engines firing in perfect sequence. The twin thrusters glowed pale blue, pushing the ship forward, on a plume brighter than sunrise. In control rooms from Nairobi to New Kyoto, technicians cheered when sensor readings came back flawless. The dreadnought's main cannon, a rail driver the length of a football field, hummed as it charged. Admiral Balor ordered a test shot at a derelict asteroid 16 meters of iron drifting harmlessly in a restricted zone. The round punched through the rock, split it like dry bread, and sent shards spinning into the void. A collective thrill, half pride and half fear, rippled across the planet. Pride in the weapon's power, fear of what would force them to use it. Not all effort went into massive ships. Smaller war cutters sleek, wedge-shaped, and nimble rolled. From factories on Luna, each christened for a river on Earth, Volga, Missouri, Zambezi. Their hulls shimmered with adaptive plating that changed hue to match starfield backgrounds. An idea donated by a university student who had once painted chameleon scales onto drones for a science fair. Volunteer crews practiced hard-burn maneuvers. In lunar orbit, weaving between debris fields left over from old communication satellites. One miscalculation meant collision, but hesitation meant defeat in battle. So they chose courage over caution again and again, until cockpit footage of perfect spiral dives filled recruitment ads. Far from the bustle of assembly lines, Professor Lena Idris deciphered more alien glyphs in her bunker. She discovered a repeating pattern that looked less like language and more like mathematical tags calibration marks for star charts or maybe weapon ranges. She forwarded her findings to Fleet Command and in return received high-security clips of captured Velk scout footage. She found herself staring at the aliens' mass driver design, noting that their barrel coils were spaced unevenly and likely to overheat. Her heart lurched at the thought that such details would help Earth's gunners kill quicker, yet she kept working. Every new fact was a strand in the rope Earth needed to pull itself clear of extinction. She whispered a quiet apology to whatever peaceful future she had once imagined, then typed a recommendation. Target coil junctions. Secondary explosions probable. The first true clash came at Frostfall Ridge, an icy asteroid chain guarding a backdoor route toward the outer colonies. Velk raiders dropped from hyperspace in a line of 5 pack ships, each bristling with harpoons and short-range lasers. They expected to cut mines loose and drag ice for water, maybe capture a few humans for study. Instead, they found the cutter Volga already waiting, her camouflage flickering off like a curtain being pulled back. Lieutenant Mara Kepler, youngest commander in the fleet, locked targeting brackets and opened with twin rail shots. The slugs ripped the lead Velk ship apart before it could pivot its forward tongue guns. The remaining 4 ships scattered, spitting green pulses that glanced off the Volga's shields. 2 more cutters burst from the shadows, Missouri and Zambezi forming, a trident formation that herded the raiders toward an empty gravity well where mines had been pre-positioned. When the Velk engines flared to escape, the mines detonated, wrapping them in webs of white plasma. Less than 6 minutes after first contact, the battle was finished. Recorder drones caught everything, and the triumphant footage looped on news feeds. Tiny human craft dancing through lethal light, winning on planning and nerve. Admiral Balor called it a skirmish, not a victory, but he pinned commendations on the cutter crews all the same. Iron forged in fire, he told them over Hala, is only as strong as the will holding it. His words rang through the fleet, turning to a motto. Engineers painted the phrase beneath maintenance hatches. Pilots etched it on helmet brims. Students back on Earth printed it on banners. Resolve hardened into shared identity, and that identity spread faster than fear ever had. Yet for every success, intelligence reports warned of larger Velk gatherings deeper in uncharted space. Scout drones pinged structures around a red dwarf orbital. Rings, maybe shipyards. The Velk were learning too. Commander Denavos analyzed the footage with Renzo Calder. Together they saw the outlines of vessels 3, possibly 4 times longer than the cutters, bristling with cannon ridges. Earth's new might was impressive, but the enemy was adapting. The coming storm would dwarf Frostfall Ridge. They both knew it, and the thought weighed heavy even during celebrations. Night over the Pacific found Renzo standing alone on a beach under a sky awash with stars. He listened to waves shushing across sand, trying to remember the sense of wonder he'd once felt for the unknown. Somewhere out there, massive forces were converging iron hulls and burning engines on a collision path set by fear and vengeance. He thought of the compass, of sparks flickering out in darkness, and of the newly forged dreadnoughts glowing like comets. Flame meeting iron. Tomorrow, the fleet would sail for Velk territory. Tonight, resolve burned brightest in the quiet hearts of those who had turned grief into steel and promised never to let the stars fall silent again. Fleet dawn rose from hyperspace like a silent sunrise, the hulls of 100 human warships, catching distant starlight and shining gold where once they had only been iron gray. They stood at the edge of Velkor space, each vessel alive with the pulse of reactor hearts and the quiet voices of thousands of crew waiting for the order to advance. Admiral Orin Balor paced the bridge of the dreadnought Vigil, feeling the weight of every name etched into her plates. Ahead lay the most powerful Velk shipyard, a ring of ship factories around a dying red dwarf. Intelligence showed fresh cruisers, still under construction, their engines cold, their weapons incomplete. Destroying the yard would set the invaders back decades. But what came after destruction? Balor looked to his officers' faces, young and hardened, resolution forged in the fires of Frostfall Ridge, and decided the answer could wait until after victory. He gave the signal. Rail drivers thundered. Lance cannons spat spears of light. The first orbital foundry cracked in half, molten metal venting into space. Velk defenders scrambled from hidden bays, hungry to bite and sting, but they met cutters moving faster than thought, weaving webs of counterfire that turned alien ships into drifting embers. One by one, factories dimmed. The red dwarfs weak. Light glinted on expanding clouds of debris. On the Vigil screen, damage markers flashed green and gold green for targets neutralized, gold for minimal losses. Balor exhaled only when the largest yard gate ruptured and spun away like a coin tossed into the void. Deep inside that wreckage, a single pulse beacon flared, a distress call and surrender code combined. Professor Lena Idris, monitoring Velk. Language from a bunker on Earth, translated its meaning as plainly as she could. We yield, speak with us, spare the larvae. The words rippled through the fleet. On the Vigil's bridge, silence replaced cheers. No one had imagined the Velk would surrender so quickly, and certainly not with a plea for mercy. Balor's first instinct was caution, yet he heard Mara Kepler's voice over the comm. Admiral, they're offering dialogue. We should at least listen. The crew who had lost friends and family waited for his call, anger and compassion warring in their eyes. He opened a channel. The Velk envoy appeared as a hologram round head, iridescent wings folded tight, forelimbs tucked in a posture that humans quickly learned meant deference. Its voice came through the translator as a soft hum, broken by clicks. We did not understand your worth, it said. Our scholars called you feeder species. We were wrong. We see iron in your light. Teach us or finish us. Balor felt something loosen in his chest anger, or maybe the tiredness beneath the anger. He thought of the compass crew, thought of Renzo Calder's grief, of welding sparks on Mars and letters carved into steel. Ending the Velk now would be simple. Building a different future would be hard. But simple things had already cost too much. He called Renzo, patched straight from Earth. Renzo's face appeared on a side monitor, eyes red from sleepless nights. "You decide," Balor said quietly. "We can break them or talk to them." Renzo remembered the blood on the screens, the screams, the moment hope turned to horror. Yet he also remembered torchlit vigils and children wearing paper wings and solidarity marches, reminding everyone of what dignity looked like, even in grief. "If we destroy them," Renzo whispered, "we prove they were right to fear the unknown. If we talk, maybe we can keep someone else from lighting another fire." Balor nodded, turned back to the envoy, and offered terms. The next hours felt longer than entire battles. Velk engineers powered down remaining weapons. Human med teams took clustered larvae off Finn food supplies and gave them protein paste. War cutters ferried survivors to neutral barges, every transfer tense but bloodless. A treaty draft grew line by line on screens. Reparations through industrial labor, technology exchanges supervised by mixed crews, a memorial station to be built. From pieces of the first shipyard half-human alloy, half-Velk crystal. Each clause was a thread sewn through raw wounds. Word of the ceasefire traveled home faster than any missile. Crowds that had once held revenge banners now watched their feeds in wary quiet. Some cheered, some cursed. But none looked away when a live broadcast showed Admiral Balor and the Velk matriarch signing the accord beneath the fractured ring of their ruined yard. Stars shimmered behind them, silent witnesses to a choice that had taken iron and flame to reach. Months later, dawn touched Earth's sky as Renzo stood in a meadow overlooking a new space elevator tower. At its base, workers installed a bronze statue's stylized compass rising from waves of metal fire, names of the lost spiraling up its hull. Children on a field trip traced the letters with small fingers while their teacher explained that courage was not only about winning wars. Sometimes it was about deciding what to do after you could win. Far above, the elevator cars shimmered, carrying supplies to the joint station where humans and Velk would learn to live side by side. Admiral Balor had already departed for that orbiting workshop, determined to shape peace with the same determination he had wielded in battle. On a nearby hill, Professor Lena Idris released the first of many translator drones. It dipped low, powered by solar wings, then soared skyward carrying a library of human languages and Velk dialects intertwined. She smiled, thinking of all the conversations waiting in dark corners of the galaxy, some friendly, some not, but none beyond reach. Of understanding if people chose to try. The meadow breeze smelled of cut grass and blooming clover, scents Renzo hadn't noticed in years. He closed his eyes and listened. No screams, only laughter from children and the distant hum of engines lifting toward the stars. Behind lids still haunted by old images, he saw a different picture now. A fleet of giant ships sailing not to burn, but to build. The iron was tempered, the flames cooled, and from the ashes something fragile and bright had risen. A dawn beyond war, lit by the shared resolve of two species that had learned painfully that the surest way to survive the unknown was to reach across it, not just with weapons, but with open hands.